For today, our plan was to talk about some things that I've been seeing in the headlines lately about remote work and returning from remote work environments. Because I think right now, Alyssa, I don't know if you've noticed this, but it seems like there's a lot of conversation about emerging from the pandemic, returning to work, and starting to navigate the post-virtual world for people in a lot of workplaces. And what I noticed is that we have been surrounded by contradictory information when it comes to remote work. I'm a bit of a news junkie. I read a lot of different news sites every morning while drinking my coffee. And there are competing headlines everywhere. And I'm seeing them daily in major newspapers. I saw headlines this morning in Newsweek, Forbes, and Inc. magazine. You'll see one headline that says, "Remote work has proven to work and it's here to stay." And right next to that, you'll see another headline that says, "The remote experiment has been a failure." And then right next to that, you'll see a study that says employees are dying to come back to work. And then right below that is another report that says your employees are not coming back to work. Have you noticed this out there in the world at all, in some of the news coverage or in even just online?
Well, so I get the lovely SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, news blurbs and things of that nature, and kind of the HR take on all of those systems. And yes, so there is a mixed messaging for sure. I think in terms of what I have interpreted from those headlines is what I generally experience in a mediation session with clients, which is there's their story, his story, her story, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle there. Because the reality is, while we may think of the past year and a half as an experiment, again, any scientist will tell you that's not really a proof of long-term concept.
Right.
So the jury should still be out. Is that reality? Can we have that kind of longer-term experiment? I think that in some businesses, it's saying, no, we can't keep doing this. So somewhere in the middle lies this space of what's really going to work in the future, and do we have to make these kind of imperative, only this black or white kind of rules and regulations? According to the HR realms, gray is not good, so we got to go with this is this way or this way, and it has to be equitable, which I get, but again, I think that it's going to be a really big maze for not just organizations as a whole, but put that down to our bosses out there, how they're going to handle within their own teams, how that's going to look in the future. Yeah. What is your sense of what the middle is, the reality of what our bosses are going to experience?
So as I alluded to in the opening of the show, I think there's a friction point coming in a couple of different ways. One of those friction points is related to what people believe about remote work, right? That right now there's a chorus of voices who are resisting returning to in-person work. They're saying, I'm happier working from remote. It's less stressful. It's better. It's more enjoyable. Yet there are studies that demonstrate that some people working from home are more stressed and less happy. Not all of them. You have to look at those studies carefully. There is, as we've said, there's contradictory information out there. I'm sure in some organizations we'll see some data that says that their remote employees were just as productive and effective in a virtual environment than they were on site. And you will have some other places where maybe that doesn't hold true. So I think that's going to be a friction point at one level. The other friction point that I think is coming is on teams and across leadership in some organizations. We know some people thrive when they're surrounded by people, and they get drained when they're alone. And we know that some people thrive alone, and they get drained when they have to spend a lot of time around people. And this is the friction point is going to be between these two groups of folks, because what's important to understand is that your employees will advocate for the environment that most caters to their personality preferences. And they will also devalue its opposite, right? When those who thrive around others say, we need to all be on site to make this work, the introverts are going to say, no, we don't. That's not true. This past year just proved it's possible. And then when those who thrive via remote environments say, hey, there is no reason we can't maintain complete virtual employment, the extroverts are going to say, no way, not true. This past year just proved it's harmful. And so, I think you hit the nail on the head, which is that the best approach likely exists between these extremes. We have to figure out how to provide flexibility for employees without inequity. I think, the organizations who commit to flexibility at the individual level and who encourage their frontline and mid-level leaders to engage in an open dialogue that prioritizes worker needs and wants, they're the ones who are going to reap the rewards. So I think we need to have leaders approaching this question in the most kind of downstream level as possible, starting at the individual level. What's working for you? What has come out of this pandemic that you want to keep? What do you want to return to? How do we strike a balance? And then we move individual, then to team, then to my division, and then my organization. Because we know that when you give employees autonomy and influence, their engagement goes up. And so here's an opportunity to do that, right? To say, hey, what's worked for you, and what parts of that can we keep?
Excellent. I hope folks got off the elliptical and or had their Post-it notes handy, because that was like a how to enact a great case strategy in terms of starting at the individual level. So bosses out there, these are the kinds of questions that you have to start approaching, thinking that you have to start here and then work up to the big picture and be able to take your big picture to your big picture. Okay. Because that's creating the environment that will most enable the majority of your teams to thrive.
Yeah.
That's going to create the conditions of success.
And I brought two stats with me that jumped off a page in something I was reading the other day. Microsoft did a survey of 31,000 full-time and self-employed people in 31 different markets. And across this survey, 66% of workers said that they were craving more in-person time at work. And 70% expressed a desire to keep virtual remote work arrangements. So this is the same survey. 66% said they were craving more in-person time at work, and 70% indicated a desire to keep virtual remote work arrangements. And guess what, folks? Both of those things can be true, right? You can have people who say, I want some touching, right? I want some of the in-person proximity, and I some days want to work in my PJs. And both of those things can be true. What matters right now is the open dialogue to identify a construct that caters to everyone, but that's flexible enough to meet people where they are, but not in a way that is inequitable. You can't give one employee a certain level of flexibility and then give another employee in the same kind of role a different set of choices, right? You're creating a liability for yourself there. But here's the thing. Go ahead.
I think that's so. The statistics are making my brain sizzle out, okay? Because this is the exact example of cognitive dissonance in a very real way that we in HR are well, it can't both be true. You can't have both.
And of course you can. I mean, of course they can both be true. You can say, sometimes I want to be close to people, and sometimes I don't. I would like the option of being able to do my job remotely some of the time, while also coming into the office and being connected to my peers some of the time. And I think that's what that data is saying.
It reminds me of this concept that I learned early in my career entry into working with individuals with disabilities. Was I had this mentor who told me the story of what the term handicapped actually meant. And it comes from this old kind of story of hand in cap
Oh, wow.
in hand, as in individuals with disabilities were out there begging for money, right? And so that's where that word came from. And so this person-centered language was always what you were taught whenever you entered into this realm of work. And so that's why I say individuals with disabilities. So you're putting the person first. And that's what I think that we need to hold on to here. In all
Yes.
of this dissidence is that we have to be putting the person, the people first before anything else, any system, any in-person, out-person, remote, blah, 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 blah. Person first, not these systems first. Person first. That seems like if we do that thing and we hold ourselves accountable to that rather than some kind of system that we've been accustomed to, that seems like it might work.
You are often on this podcast quick to compliment my ability to tie things together in a nice bow. And I need to take this opportunity to tell you what a phenomenal job you just did doing that very sort of thing. Because not only did you get to the heart of the matter, which is really about people first, work with the individual, work up from there, but the example that you used was about creating an equitable and inclusive workplace, and in talking about some of the differences that show up in the workplace sometimes, using the example of disabled persons, individuals with disabilities, and calling back to the conversation we just had about social justice. And so, my friend, well done. I'm going to give you a triangle ding.
Wow, I'm honored. And that is high praise coming from you. You must be rubbing off on me, Joe.